By the way, what's this beef between Kenya and Tanzania?
It's historical. The beef between Kenya and Tanzania is historical. Remember, and I'm a student of East African community, I've written about it. If you remember when Kenya was, when the first community collapsed, our foreign policy was always ambivalent, even during the struggle against apartheid. While Tanzania had clarity and was in the frontline states, ours was ambivalent. Kenya and Malawi were not quite clear. Even when Jomo Kenyatta mediated the problem in Angola, there was no clarity. That is number one. Number two, we took a totally different path in the 1960s in terms of our politics. In session of paper number 10 of 1965, we say that is African socialism, but we were much more inclined to what was then characterized as capitalism. Tanzania, on the other hand, was much more inclined to a system which was unique to them, ujamaa, which was, of course, nationalization of assets and therefore socialistic. And then we appeared as if, on average, we are arrogant and contemptuous of others. And Tanzanians tend to be a lot more polite, even when they are arresting you, as they say in Tanzania, the police officers request that naomba nikutie nguvuni. So our perceived arrogance, and there is something when the East African community was collapsing, what was called the Nairobi mentality. The Nairobi mentality is the misguided belief by Kenyan officialdom that we are better than everybody in East Africa. And that rubs the Tanzanians the wrong way. And unfortunately, over the years, we have not succeeded in changing that image. And it's not all Kenyans who are in that space, it's only a few. But remember, stereotyping is something that takes root and is very difficult to eliminate. And that is the reason why even now we are seen to be anti-Tanzania. And it doesn't help when the Tanzanians have a problem and we are seen to be in a celebratory mood in certain quarters. It doesn't help.
And also, see, I mean, when you look at the election that was, I mean, Kenya really pushed for Tanzanians overall in
Yes.
terms of their liberation, quote unquote,
Yes.
and just for the human rights, I think.
Yes.
So,
and the other thing that we don't talk about, there are a lot of non-governmental organizations which are very active, Western funded here, which are very active in Kenya and therefore a lot more vocal. But the Tanzanians have a different history. And part of the reason why Tanzanians also fear interacting with us too intimately is the ethnicity in our politics. I know a Tanzanian friend of mine who said, hatutaki wa Kenya watuambukize na siasa za ukabila. And that is legitimate.
That's very
that
true,
is a legitimate concern, that the more we interact with them, the more we are going to export what they consider to have political bad manners, where we organize ourselves around Ikoyo, Luo, Kamba, Luhia, and Kalenjin. In Tanzania, nobody talks about that. People, there are more ethnicities, but they talk about Vyama, they talk about CCM, they talk about Chadema, they talk about ACT Wazalendo, they talk about CAF. And to that, we must praise Tanzania and praise Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere.
Yeah. When you look at the whole idea of bringing the East African together, of course, there's a treaty that was signed so that these nations, are able to work together. But when we look at it, what are the achievements that EAC has had that we can proudly say Jumuiya has been worth having? Because now we just have an organization that really we can't tell what it's doing.
I would be a little more charitable to the East African community and look at it at two levels. What I call East African Community 1, which collapsed in 1977, perhaps was much more practical in the manner in which it affected people's lives. We had the East African Railways, East African Post and Telecommunication, East African Airways, and people could work. A Kenyan could work in Kasese. A students from Kenya studied law in Dar es Salaam, others in Makerere. There was easy movement of people. We had one common currency. Those were the golden years of East African community. Then we allowed it to collapse. When the East African community was resuscitated or revived in 1990s, we thought we had learned the lessons of the collapse of the first community. But unfortunately, I don't think we have, because the suspicions still remain alive. So it is true to say that there are areas where we are collaborating. If you look at the East, the free movement of peoples, that is something to be commended. I think between Kenya and Uganda, we use identity cards to move. We see buses plying Tanzania and the Kenyan routes, Rwanda up to Burundi. We see people trading across the region. So there are things that you can talk about that affect people's lives. In the borders are porous. You go to the border in Arusha, the Taita Taveta area is porous. You go to Isebania, the same thing. Go to Kenya-Uganda border, go to Rwanda, it's porous. Between Rwanda and Burundi is a different kettle of fish. So people to people, there is a sense in which we are doing very well. Where we are not doing well is at the official level, where we talk about tariff and non-tariff barriers, we talk about common market, we talk about harmonization of education. These are the areas where you don't see the dividends. And then we went on this expansion mode, where we brought in countries which were not traditionally within the East Africa, the original East Africa. In Europe, which has a better method, before a country becomes a member, you become a candidate under the Copenhagen rules, so that we bring your economy up to scratch, so that Burundi would have been a candidate first. Rwanda is a good candidate because it has this act together. Somalia would have been a candidate. The Democratic Republic of Congo would have been a candidate. South Sudan would have been a candidate. But that is water under the bridge. The net effect of this is that we are not harmonized. That is why you see the Congo is a member but behaves the way it is behaving. And then the other thing is multiple membership in regional organization. Tanzania is a member of SADC for historical reason. Congo is a member of SADC for historical reason. And for that reason, you have countries which are sometimes sleeping on the same bed, but they have different dreams. And people are questioning that. Remember, in 2004, there was the fast tracking of political federation. If you look at the treaty, it says it's called Common Market, Customs Union, and ultimately political federation. But in 2004, the heads of states and government said, let us expedite political federation. And if we had expedited, the first president of East African Federation should have been sworn in on the first day of January, the year 2010. All the landmarks have not been fulfilled. We ought to have had a common currency. We ought to have had a common working customs union. We ought to have harmonized our education. All these have not happened. And as I talk now, I see the centrifugal forces are becoming stronger and stronger by the day. So there are things, there are dividends that you can say these are the dividends that we have earned out of the East African community, and that we are sharing a number of things. But we are saying on a scale of 1 to 10, we are performing at 4. We ought to be performing at 8. And that is our concern. And when you hear that countries have not made their contribution to the East African community and that workers are not being paid, then you get worried. Kenya makes a contribution. I think they have made 100% contribution as I speak.
Leading. Yes.
I think Tanzania has made part of our contribution. Rwanda has made part of our contribution. Uganda has made part of our contribution. Somalia also did make a contribution. Democratic Republic of Congo, zilch.
Nothing.
Burundi, zilch.
But are we expecting too much from countries like Congo? Yet we are being accused of being the perpetrators of the war. Like we are playing a part of the war that is happening, and then we expect them to pay. I mean, what relations are those?
That is the confusion. Sarah, this is the confusion. That if we are part of the same family in certain cases, and we are also undermining members of the same family. You've seen, for example, that the Kinshasa government had a problem with us. They had a problem with us when Kenya had a candidate for the African Union. We misbehaved. And they went away. Right now, we have accommodated leaders who are seen to be anti-Kinshasa administration. So there is a sense in which there is no coherent terms of engagement. On paper and at treaty level, you may say, but the treaty is clear. But the treaty is a broad document. What are the necessary, ordinary, practical terms of engagement? What are the taboos that we just don't engage in? And what are the ethical issues that we must engage in as part of the community? You know, the European Union borrowed from many things from the regional East African community. And you can see whenever there is a problem within the EU, like them or hate them, they call each other to order. But we don't. And I agree with you that, look at, for example, when we had a force in the Democratic Republic of Congo, they told us, go away.
Yeah.
They went to SADC. So that is the problem. You call a physical meeting, people are not willing to attend. You call a virtual meeting, they are not willing to attend. So we must rethink and revisit the fundamentals.
And people have been questioning in terms of the people in leadership and questioning that we need to have conversations.
Yeah.
But then the people we expect to have conversations with are actually the warlords.
You know, we have this, there's something that I call gramophone diplomacy, where the things you ought to say silently are the things that you are speaking at public rallies and in press conferences. You poison the environment. That is gramophone diplomacy, sometimes described when it escalates into gunboat diplomacy. Proper diplomacy, diplomats will guide us, requires that things are done subterraneanly, under the water. You only see the submarine when it is emerging, but the things that he has done are great. So I hold the view that if we were to change tack and to avoid what I call political grandstanding, there is too much grandstanding in the region. Everybody wants to appear to be the big kahuna, and we must liberate ourselves from that kind of situation if we are to make this region function, particularly at the people-to-people level. Because these political things that you see, they affect people-to-people relationship. Somebody was buying onions in Tanzania is now impeded. Somebody was buying bananas in Uganda is impeded. Somebody was riding in the ENA bus from Nairobi to Rwanda is now impeded. Is that necessary? Is that leadership? Is that what we want in the region? Is that what will make Africans to work together when we are talking about Africa Agenda 2063 and Africa Continental Free Trade Area? Beyond the rhetoric? These are critical questions. And unfortunately, we are not engaging in these issues or engaging with them as intimately and as practically as we should.
The SADC, after the elections in Tanzania, SADC was seen to be like one of the bodies that actually called out and spoke the truth, while EAC, African Union, they all massaged and went around it and not spoke out. Do you think then the relationship that Tanzania is going to have with SADC moving forward is going to be the same?
I've read the reports. I've read the SADC report. I've read the AUC report. I've read the report of the East African community. And I think if you look at the dishonest reports, they say many things, this was prepared, this was prepared. But you see, if you have a cup of coffee like this, the coffee is good and noble. But when a fly gets into it, you pour the whole thing out. This is what we are saying. That no matter how good it was, a fly has dropped. We cannot just continue to drink it. We have to remove the fly and possibly take the coffee to be boiled again, so that if there was any germs there, it is killed in the heat. And I hold the view that when sobriety returns, it is the SADC report that will be seen to have been more honest than all these other reports, which are simply massaging egos.
Let's just wait and see how that goes.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
Looking across the continent, of course, there have been demonstrations across from the east to south to the west and everywhere. And recently we saw the president of Zambia stoned in, I think, one of the campaigns moving. He was moving around.
Yes.
I mean, our own president in Kenya, someone once threw, was it a shoe or something?
Yes.
When you see these things, and the young people say it's a dissatisfaction, and they're finding ways to communicate. Do you think this older generation understands the frustration that the youth have?
If they don't, they are better. And I've said this on a number of occasions. The crowd, and borrowing from the Bible, the crowd that tells you Hosanna in the highest is the very same crowd that cries, crucify him. Because young people are impatient. Young people can see people in political leadership becoming overnight millionaires. And they are graduating as engineers, as lawyers, as doctors, as teachers, and they cannot get jobs. Or if they get them, they are not paid. And if they are paid a pittance. They look at their countries and they see a presidential motorcade with 20 cars complete with a toilet. And they say, how can we allow this kind of provocation? Look at Madagascar. Andy Rajwell himself came to power via the streets, promising to solve basic things, water and electricity. 16 years down the line, no water, no electricity in Antananarivo. The people are saying, and we have been paying taxes. Kenya, look at your electricity bills. Look at the taxes that you pay. Somebody is sending me a book via DHL from Lagos, Nigeria. And there is even railway levy that I'm supposed to pay, housing levy. You go to all these countries, you go to Cameroon. Students have not gone to school in southern Cameroon and be at 92, rigs an election. Go to Abidjan, Alison Ouattara, Baz Bagbo, and others from contesting the election. Then he says, I've been elected. You go to Sudan, 12 million displaced people, refugees. The country is being divided effectively into 4 units. If you are in positions of leadership, wouldn't you be worried? Shouldn't you be worried? Shouldn't you be engaging your people? Shouldn't you be asking young people? Shouldn't you be visiting them at university? Shouldn't you be talking to the civil society? Shouldn't you be talking to the religious community? Shouldn't you be a listening head of state? Shouldn't you cut down your opulence? Shouldn't you stop giving money in hundreds of millions in different spaces when your own population is suffering, cannot eat? Shouldn't you be frugal? Shouldn't you be afraid? I'm telling African politicians, you had better be scared. You had better be scared or change course.
I think they better change the course as
Yes.
soon as possible. The other day, our president was in Qatar and did an interview with Al Jazeera. And there are things that stood out for me. One was the question about engagement with Sudan, RSF. And in his response, he said that he hosted human rights group, women and all that. Yet, what we have seen on video, even actually the poster is still on his Twitter account and maybe Facebook, is him with the generals. And we've even seen investigation stories done that have guns in Tanzania, in Sudan, that treat Kenya. When such things happen, what are we doing about our country?
You know, when I watched that interview, I may be wrong, but it may be some PR firm, image cleaning firm, that is telling our president, do a major interview in Al Jazeera. They may also recommend him, do a major interview with BBC, do a major interview with CNN, do a major interview with all these outlets to clean your image. But facts are stubborn. They stand out. We are not stupid, even if others may think we are. The ease with which we have seen leading figures in the RSF operating in Nairobi, and is all on record, our newspapers have them, is not going to be erased by a single statement in an interview with Al Jazeera. What we must do is to change course. There is a recognized government in Khartoum. Whether you like it or not, engage with it. Diplomatically, if you are accommodating people from that country, let the embassy of Sudan know it. We have an embassy of Sudan here in Nairobi. Did they approve?
Just so they haven't paid rent for
Yes, that is
how
south.
long.
Yes. So engage with them. Tell them, we have the embassy of the Democratic Republic of Congo here. When their nationals are coming here, particularly of a certain level, it is good manners to engage them. At the Pan-African Institute, we just invited President Serese Kama, Ian Kama, as our guest. But we informed the Embassy of Botswana, we informed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Everybody was aware that former President Ian Kama was in this country. Jewel Taylor was to come here from Liberia. We informed everybody. When Julius Selo Malema was here 2 years ago, I informed everybody in officialdom because it is good manners, and I'm not even in government. It is just good manners. And if we continue as a people to be mannerless, the world will treat us with contempt. And one of the things that we must remind our leaders is this: you are not demigods. The offices you hold in trust for us. You must do that which is in our best interest, not in your best interest. I think this is the single thing that politicians in Africa forget very often, conveniently. And it is our duty to remind them that you hold offices in trust. What joy does it give us when Sudan is destroyed? I have my colleagues who are professors at the University of Khartoum who are with me. No jobs. Painful. And yet you entertain people. These individuals were the same people who are Janjaweed. And you remember Janjaweed means the devil on horseback. They decimated black populations in Darfur, the Zagawa and the Darfur and the Fur. The agenda is to Arabize those spaces. So when we entertain them, what are we doing? Right now, there are 12 million people. You find them in Chad, in South Sudan. You find them in Ethiopia, in Egypt. No vaccination taking place, which means diseases like polio are going to be with us with a bang. Whole generations are dying. What joy, even if you sleep on a bed of gold. What joy. These are the questions.
It was really sad to see the genocide in El Fasher.
El Fasher. Just somebody, people surrender. You tell them to go, then you shoot them from the back. Never.
At what point does Kenya take a turn? Because we can't be having sports everywhere where we are the people facilitating evil, so to say.
You know, this is one of the better countries in Africa that we must never forget. In terms of the human resource, I dare say the only countries that can compete with us is Nigeria and Ghana. That is, I'm excluding Egypt from the north. In terms of no, South Africa cannot compete with us. In terms of human resource, you go across Africa, Kenyans everywhere, good. The reason why even the UN finds Nairobi attractive, because we are good. So the majority of Kenyans mean well. The problem is our politics. Who do we have in politics in this country? Who do we have? When your basis of mobilization is to corrupt the electorate and to mobilize the electorate on the basis of their ethnic background, then you get the wrong people. Then you have policies on paper which you honor in breach. And I hold the view that the time is now that we should change. Look at the things we have, for example, even in board management, something called mwongozo. If Kenyan public boards were to follow mwongozo, we would have beautiful boards. But do we? How do we appoint our ambassadors? Career diplomats are bypassed, and political appointees are given ambassadorial appointments as retirement. They have no idea what diplomacy is all about. And yet somebody who has labored to be a diplomat for years is ignored and bypassed. We must rethink our position as a leader. Remember, as I speak now, Kenya holds the chair of East African Community, and we also hold the secretariat of the East African Community. If the community collapses, the baby will have died in our hands as a country. Can we afford that luxury? Will history be kind to us? Kenya should be operating with a sense of urgency in the region to ensure that this ship is steadied during our watch. In the region, you see how we lost, our candidate lost the office of the AUC to a little country. Djibouti does not have embassies in more than 10 countries in the country, but we lost because of poor diplomacy. You are dancing and celebrating in Addis Ababa before we won. We must ask, when you go through those spaces, and I talk to many retired ambassadors in Kenya, and I ask them, do they ever come to you to consult you? They don't. So I hold the view that one of the things as a country that we should do is to ask our political leaders to be humble. Humility. Humility is the mother's milk of true knowledge. And don't be afraid of ideas. The people who come out and say what they say, they may not always be right, but they mean well. Engage them. Ask them. They may not have solution to everything, but get the ideas. Pick their brains. Use the Kenya School of Government well. It is there. They are good people in Kenya School of Government. Use Esami well. Use the universities well. There is no shortage of resources. But unfortunately, I listen to some of the people who are now the opinion leaders in Kenya saying, oh, wafinye Tanzania, you punish them, Uganda, you bring them here, we finish them. Somebody says that on national television.
And they're a senator.
Yes, and they are senator, and they are not punished. What do you mean? Finish them, kill them? And nothing happens. A bishop in Nyanza made a statement which, on the basis of the fact you cannot quarrel with, a group of young men and women have said they are going to visit him. What do they mean? Our institutions must be allowed to work so that the culture of impunity is killed for this generation and generations yet to be born. The universities in this country are on a strike, public universities, for over 2 months. In other countries, that would be a crisis of major proportion for which parliament would convene. Nothing. Kenya must provide leadership through humility, through consistency, through compassion, and through good neighborliness.
We have a lot to
We
work
have a
on.
lot. Our plate is full.
Yet we want our tentacles out there instead of dealing with what we have. Okay. The other day, just going down further, the other day, Trump cancelled the G20 visit, or is it participation from the US. We know J.D. Vance was supposed to come. And of course, he was actually supposed to come in Kenya after that, either before or during the G20 meeting. But then Trump said South Africa is a no-go zone because genocide of white people is still happening. Yet in May, we had the president of South Africa in the White House. They showed videos of Congo and everyone was like, why is Trump after South Africa?
Two things. I think South Africa is bearing the brunt of foreign policy that is difficult to understand from the United States of America, what I call gunboat diplomacy from the United States of America. And I think South Africa is being punished for 3 reasons. Reason number 1, you dared take Israel to the International Court of Justice for Gaza. Sin number 1. Sin number 2, you dared say that you have the muscle to broker peace between Ukraine and Russia. Who are you? Sin number 3, you dared join BRICS, an organization that is giving prominence to China, Brazil, and India, and is talking about de-dollarization. Those are the 3 sins. The others, that there is genocide. There is no such genocide in South Africa. In fact, some South Africans who had gone to the United States have gone back. They have discovered that life is nicer in Western Cape, in Durban, and in Johannesburg, and in Free State. But if you want to kill a dog, you give it a bad name. So the idea is to punish South Africa, and is therefore being given a bad name. And of course, Western media can be very effective by propagandization. And that is what is being done, propagandization.
How will they get themselves out of this?
They must be bold, they must be courageous. And that is why some of us always take the view that the only way in which Africa is going to immunize ourselves from bullying is to speak with one voice as Africa. Because if you are dealing with Africa, then you will not isolate countries and deal with them in the manner that Nigeria is being targeted, the manner that South Africa is being targeted, Zimbabwe is being targeted, the Sahel countries are being targeted. My own view is we must move with jet-like speed, easier said than done. Either if we can't do it initially as African Union, let's do it as regions, SADC, ECOWAS, East African Communities, Central Africa, Maghreb, and if we, the Horn, if we do that, then how do you deal with us? But unfortunately, because in Africa, we also love it when our neighbors are being punished. I am quite certain that there are certain leaders in Africa that are happy that South Africa is being dealt with in the manner that is being dealt with. Divide them, keep them weak, and dominate them. That is what is happening to Africa. And that is how you see the United States of America behave that way, the European Union behave that way towards Africa. And even individual countries behave that way. The French will behave that way. The British will behave that way. It is the same thing that they did in Berlin in 1884 and 1885. Déjà vu. Divide
2.0.
and conquer. Indeed, you've got it so very well.
So, if for instance, if Vance was to come, what do you think? What conversations was Kenya going to?
I do not know. You know, the United States of America is now so unpredictable. They may cancel today and and revive it tomorrow. But this must be seen in the context of fighting China. The United States of America is now upping the ante in Africa, knowing as they do that the Chinese, in very subtle diplomacy, are occupying space in a number of countries. The Russians are also occupying those spaces. Turkey is also occupying those spaces. And I think the whole idea was to come and remind Kenyans, we are traditional friends, new UN agencies are moving from the US and they are coming here. We have historical ties. Therefore, continue to be a good boy, good girl, so that we may favor you. We can extend AGOA. We'll give you a few more billions. The IMF and the World Bank will be more favorable to you. We can invite you once again to the United States on a state visit and you feel nice. So it's all geopolitics in the spirit of divide and rule, in the spirit of the new scramble for Africa. That is what the conversation would center around.
Okay. Again, Trump said that he's going to send his men in Nigeria because they are persecuting Christians. What has Nigeria done this time?
I think the problem of Boko Haram in Nigeria and in Nigeria generally, it does not lend itself to very easy answers. Nigeria, as we know, has had a complex and difficult history. The manner in which it came into being, we know the Biafra civil war, the wounds are still there. We know the recent problem in eastern Nigeria with the IPOB. We know the history of men. We know the history of Boko Haram. And the conflict is a lot more complex. And therefore to say that you are going to bomb Nigeria to solve the Boko Haram problem is really to misunderstand the situation. If you want to deal with it, I think it is important to engage Nigerians at all levels. And once you engage them, then you will be in a position to determine the areas and points of intervention. And the beauty of Nigeria is that there are people who understand the problem. If you talk to the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, he understands the problem. If you talk to individuals such as former Abdusalam Abubakar, the former president, he understands the problem. If you talk to Goodluck Jonathan, he understands the problem. If you talk to people in Biafra such as Nnamdi Kanu, they understand the problem. There is no shortage of individuals in Nigeria, both in the past and in the present, who appreciate what the problem is. And it is important that you engage with them. And to say that you are going to bomb a sovereign country is also unfortunate. And this is why I've been saying a lot more recently that I think the UN has reached the stage where the League of Nations reached in 1940s, that it now needs thorough reform. I mean, people are now ignoring the UN, and its institutions are being led to the slaughter. If we say that nations are sovereign, that you respect nations, how can the head of one nation say that I'm going to bomb another nation without even consulting the leaders of that nation? And the ECOWAS is not angry. African Union is not angry. African heads of states are not hungry. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, he is not angry. He has not spoken. His own country, the Senate and the House of Representatives have not censured their head of state, because that would be a declaration of war.
But all these organizations you're mentioning across, when anything happens, the best they do is, we have noted with concern.
Yeah.
I call them like a chat GPT.
In fact, I think they just revived them and date them. they have no teeth. This is why they are to be reformed.